As of September, unpaid wages have reached 1.64 billion rubles, about $17 million, a jump of over a billion rubles from last year and nearly triple what it was 12 months ago. Russia is beginning to buckle under the pressure of sanctions. The United States froze the assets of Russia's central bank. The ruble's value is crashing, and industrial giants are now forcing staff into furloughs or cutting workers altogether. Factories are slowing down, mines are closing, and millions of Russian citizens are being pushed to the brink. The first alarm came from Russia's industrial heartlands. Workers who once relied on steady paychecks are now begging to be paid at all. In October, more than 60 power plant employees climbed to the roof of their facility, threatening to jump unless management immediately handed over the salaries they were owed. Months of delayed pay and hardship led to a desperate protest. Even Russia's most profitable companies are falling apart. Alrosa reduced pay by 10% and subsequently halted operations at several mines. The oil sector, once the Kremlin's lifeline, is breaking down too. Last month, an entire crew aboard a sanctioned Russian oil tanker refused to sail after 4 months without pay. Authorities were forced to detain the vessel in the port of Murmansk. 20 crew members were owed nearly $100,000 in unpaid wages, money that never came. These tankers, part of Russia's so-called shadow fleet, have been illegally transporting sanctioned oil for 3 years. But when the very hands sustaining your economy stop being paid, it's not just a logistical issue anymore. It is a symptom of broader systemic strain. The wage backlog stretches far beyond oil or coal. The largest single case involves a major road construction company that hasn't paid its 3,600 employees since March. The debt stands at 608 million rubles, or roughly $8 million, accounting for more than 35% of all officially reported unpaid wages. But the reality is far worse. Dozens of other firms are sitting on debts that easily exceed official figures. An industrial equipment supplier in the Kemerovo region owes 65 million rubles, about $800,000, to its workers. A food services company called Rasvet in Tula has racked up 36 million rubles in wage debts, roughly $450,000. According to Russian trade unions, the true nationwide total surpasses 2.4 billion rubles, double the government's numbers and 5 times higher than last year. The irony is that only 2 years ago, many Russians were earning more than ever. When the war began in 2022, mobilization created a labor shortage. The state poured billions into defense production, and factories ran 24/7 to meet orders. Military contractors offered premium wages to keep workers on the line. By 2023, average incomes rose nearly 6%, officially outpacing inflation for the first time in years. For a moment, it looked like Putin had delivered an economic miracle, but it was an illusion, a short-lived sugar rush. By mid-2023, factories were breaking under pressure. Labor and supply shortages collided with impossible production goals. Russia's unemployment rate fell to a record low of just 2.1%, but that figure hid the truth. Millions of working-age men were either drafted into the army or trapped in overworked defense plants. Putin bragged about the number as proof of economic strength. But behind closed doors, his advisors warned of stagnation. The Central Bank of Russia stepped in, hiking interest rates from 16% to 21%, the highest level in over 2 decades, to fight inflation. It worked, but only temporarily. Inflation cooled, prices stabilized, yet the cure proved as damaging as the disease. For companies that relied on loans, the result was devastating. Debt costs skyrocketed by 30 to 70%, forcing them to halt hiring, cut hours, or delay wages. GDP growth slowed from 4.3% in 2024 to barely 1% in 2025. At least 1/3 of Russian enterprises are now unprofitable. Out of 20 major manufacturing sectors, only 4 are still growing, and 3 of those are tied directly to military production. Most civilian sectors are contracting or stagnating. By mid-2025, 67 of Russia's 89 regions had already spent their yearly budgets. In the Komi Republic, a mining-heavy region, income tax revenue plunged 54% year over year. Nearby Chelyabinsk, a major steel hub, saw its revenues drop by 1/3. Local governments are scrambling to pay teachers, doctors, and nurses, basic workers who hold communities together. Entire towns are on the verge of collapse. In western Siberia, a plywood mill run by Sveza, one of Russia's biggest wood producers, shut down almost overnight after demand for furniture evaporated. More than 300 people lost their jobs immediately, with reports of no severance and no clear next steps. And the pain doesn't stop there. Russia's once mighty coal industry is collapsing. Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak warned that 30 coal mines were on the verge of bankruptcy. In the Kuzbas region, 18 out of 151 mines had already closed by mid-year. Nearly 19,000 coal workers, out of roughly 150,000 nationwide, have been laid off. Only 2,400 managed to find other jobs. For the rest, unemployment is a death sentence in towns where coal was the only source of income. This isn't just an economic story, it's a political one. Russians have seen this nightmare before. In the 1990s, unpaid wages and mass strikes became a way of life. In 1998, miners blocked the Trans-Siberian Railway after months without pay. Putin's rise to power was built on ending that humiliation. For 2 decades, he kept that promise. Teachers, nurses, and civil servants across the country are joining the ranks of unpaid workers. Major automakers and steel plants have cut back to 4-day work weeks, slicing salaries by 20%. AvtoVAZ, Russia's largest car maker with 40,000 employees, adopted the reduced schedule in September. Gaz and Kamaz followed. Even Russian Railways, with 700,000 workers, has asked staff to take unpaid days off each month to cut costs. The Kremlin is quietly pressuring industries not to fire workers outright, fearing social unrest. In early 2023, 1,000 migrant workers in Moscow went unpaid for 4 months while building a luxury complex. When they protested, guards from the powerful Crocus Group fired warning shots to disperse the crowd. Meanwhile, China is quietly taking advantage. Beijing buys Russian resources, gas, coal, steel, uranium, at bargain prices, and floods Russian markets with cheap goods, pushing local firms into bankruptcy. This positions Chinese firms to expand market share after the war. For years, the defense sector seemed untouchable, the one part of the economy thriving under war. But by August 2025, even that illusion collapsed. Salaries in arms factories dropped by 10%, the first cut since the invasion began. Deputy Industry Minister Vasily Osmakov admitted publicly that the economy had reached a turning point. There were no workers left to recruit, no factories left to expand. Outside of specific sectors like drone manufacturing, demand had plateaued. Russia's arms industry feeds a vast web of suppliers, steel mills, electronics factories, transport firms. Reducing military orders doesn't just shrink budgets, it devastates entire industrial regions. Before the war, Russia accounted for 11% of global arms exports. It may try to return to that market after the conflict, but who will buy weapons proven to fail in Ukraine? The Kremlin spent 8.5 trillion rubles, about $100 billion, on defense in the first half of 2025 alone. And still, wages are being cut. That suggests deep strain within the war economy. Even payments to soldiers are shrinking. In Tatarstan, contract payouts have fallen from 3.1 million rubles to 800,000, a 75% drop. In regions like Mary El, Chuvashia, Belgorod, and Nizhny Novgorod, the numbers are similar. Some fighters now risk their lives for as little as $6,000. At this point, the cracks in Russia's war economy are no longer theoretical. They're visible, measurable, and accelerating. So, can Putin keep fighting a war abroad while holding an economy together at home? Or will something finally give? For now, the Kremlin can paper over the numbers. It can silence protests, replace factory directors, or pump emergency cash into failing regions. But every delayed paycheck chips away at the illusion of stability. Factories forced into 4-day work weeks, families skipping meals while waiting for overdue salaries, workers threatening suicide from rooftops. These are no longer isolated incidents. They are warnings. Putin built his legitimacy on one promise: stability. And now, that promise is collapsing. If this continues for just a few more months, the result could be a surge in localized protests and labor actions, unlike anything Russia has seen in decades. Not political protests about democracy or NATO, just raw rage over survival. A man who can't feed his family doesn't care about propaganda. And while the Kremlin can still deflect blame, scapegoating corrupt factory bosses or regional governors, there's a limit to how long that can work. The poverty rate is quietly rising. Government handouts are running dry. Sooner or later, Russia will have to choose between funding the war and feeding its people. For now, ordinary Russians are paying the price of Putin's war, not with their taxes or their sons, but with the wages they'll never see. So how long can a war economy survive when its workers stop getting paid? That answer may decide not just Russia's future, but a potential inflection point in Russia's domestic stability.